Today's conversation is about the one thing that all ancient wisdom agrees we should do. Right, all the ancient wisdom agrees we should do this one thing. Right, and this one thing is this. Stillness. Let's make sure you can all see that, right? And can I just pause the whole thing there? Have you ever seen a post-it note that big? Good size that. It's gigantic. Gigantic post-it notes. I'm having loads of fun with these. Look, I've got these ones that I thought were gigantic, but these are even bigger. Anyway, I've got a complete sidetrack, but stillness is the key. There's a brilliant book, Just Why I'm on a Roll, by a guy called Ryan Holiday, who I admire greatly. I think he's brilliant. Wrote The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy. I've got about 1,000 of those books out there. I was lucky enough to interview him at one point, but his latest book, Stillness is the Key, just really solidified something in my mind that I've been thinking for a long while, is that I think there's a bit of an obsession at the moment around mindfulness, right? And everyone, that's a big generalization, most people know about mindfulness at this stage. But here's the thing about mindfulness. Most people understand it, sort of, but most people are not doing it. And then what happens with this popular type of techniques and psychology and mindset training in many ways is that there's an assumption if we're not doing it, we're doing it wrong. Or if we are doing it, we're not doing it quite right. Therefore, mindfulness is not for me. And what that's done is put this blanket over stillness. And mindfulness doesn't have a monopoly on stillness. It's just one technique. And when you look back through the ages of the ages to the great religions and the great texts and the great thinkers, they all, without exception, cultivate stillness in their life as a way to enlightenment, as a way to elite thinking, as a way to elite performance. Yet I think we've been slightly crowded out a little bit by this mindfulness concept. Caveat, I love mindfulness. I think it's a brilliant technique and a brilliant tool, but it's not the only way to get to stillness. It's just one of many ways to get to stillness, as Holiday describes it, as I like to describe it, because I think it gives us a few more options when it comes to quieting our mind. And many of them, you might not be aware of, can be super active. For example, a great friend of mine is a lady called Emma Prideaux. She's a brilliant elite runner, Olympic style runner, the fastest woman ever, age 45 to 50, to run 20 miles in the UK. She broke that record just recently. Anyway, we were talking about mindfulness, and she said to me, there's no way I could ever do that mindfulness thing because I can't sit still. I've never been able to sit still. And then we had a slightly broader conversation, and I said to her, what happens when you go on those long runs? She runs every day, 10, 15 mile type runs. And instantly there was a change in her demeanour, and she smiled. And she was like, well, I just get into this sort of groove. I just feel pretty much at one. I feel sort of happy, energized. I'm totally in the moment. I'm not thinking about the shopping or the to-do lists or all the stuff that's going on in the world. I'm just at one with running. And I stopped and went, that's mindfulness. It's the same thing. That's stillness. It's the same thing. That's flow that athletes often talk about. It's that total present moment, locked in mindset. And that's essentially all mindfulness is. All stillness is. It's the same thing. It's just being present in the moment, not being sucked back into the past or forward into the future. It's just being present. It's just being or cultivating stillness. But flow is exactly the same thing. Those moments when we're totally absorbed in task. And that could come like an athlete who's running, or it could come from reading a book or just watching your children play. It's the same thing. It's not this mindfulness thing that we have to master, and if we can't master it, that's it, we're out. It's just a different way to achieve the same thing. In fact, all mindfulness is a synthetic way in many ways to get into that flow type state quite quickly. Because you can plan mindfulness where it's a bit more difficult to plan running or playing elite sport or painting, for example, or watching the kids. Some of that stuff's a bit more sporadic, but you can always come back to your breath, which is essentially what mindfulness is in many ways, or come back to the present moment to allow yourself to get into this state of stillness where your mind is not, rushing into the future or agonizing about the past. That's essentially all it is. So I think Ryan Holiday's book is a great gateway into the idea that actually this is not all about this formal practice of mindfulness, which is brilliant, by the way, and I love mindfulness, and it's a really important skill to cultivate. And if you can get into mindfulness, like myself, it took me 3 goes to get into it. And when I say 3 goes, I mean 3 proper attempts of weeks of trying to do the mindfulness meditation, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. I couldn't sit still. I was a bit too anxious to make it happen. I was trying too hard. I wanted to be the best. I wanted immediate results. And I think that's what happens when you get into mindfulness the wrong way. You can look at it like this thing that you have to achieve, that you have to master, that you have to get to the end of, that you have to win a gold medal. I always joke that I literally, and this is the truth, researched mindfulness Olympics. I was like, if I'm going to get into this, I'm going to be the best at this, right? I'm going to really study and work really hard to be the greatest meditator, mindfulness dude ever. And then realised that was totally the wrong approach. It's not about that. It's about this concept of stillness. It's just about finding some time in the present moment, however that works for you. And right now, with everything that's happening in the world, in amongst this chaos, cultivating stillness, I think, is more important than ever. And it's at a premium, right? Because if the kids are up running around and you're homeschooling and you're working from home and your partner's around all the time, trying to find these moments are more and more difficult. But that's the point. You don't need a perfect moment of quietness and and a cushion and floating clouds. You don't need any of that. You can actually cultivate stillness with a cup of tea out in your garden, if you're lucky to have enough of a garden, or looking out the window, or reading a book. It's the same stuff, or painting, or doing your job, or watching the kids. It's all just stillness. So don't sell yourself short and assume, well, I'm not getting no time to do this because I need these perfect conditions. You can find stillness anywhere and everywhere within your day. That being said, top tip is to schedule your stillness wherever you can. Right, schedule your stillness wherever you can. I touched on this just recently. The mornings are a great place to put it. It could be that cup of tea in the morning when you just sit with it and you're just present with the tastes and the sounds and the sensations of being alive of a morning, rather than going, I've got to go and do this. And what about that? Oh, I forgot to do that. It's just coming into the present moment. That's all it is. Or it could be to read a book. Again, or it could be to schedule in some hobby time, because when you paint, that's when you get into flow. Or when you go for your run, your daily one piece of exercise or whatever it is, maybe that brings you flow. But really connecting it, start to think about building that stillness into all these other areas of your life, rather than feeling like you must do this formal mindfulness meditation every day. And if you don't, that means you can't avail of all the wonderful benefits that come from mindfulness, because they are many. The research is there. It's unbelievable. When I got into this mindfulness 6-7 years ago, there was, barely any research. Now there is just thousands upon thousands of studies to say how amazing it is for your immune system, for your mental health, for your physical health. It is something that we should have in our lives, but I think we need to get out of this one box thinking of it has to be this mindfulness thing, otherwise we're missing this opportunity. We're not. It's there. It's everywhere. So this is what I would like you to do today. If you want, schedule in your stillness. Find a moment, whether it's straight after this, or it's at 6 p.m, or it's tomorrow morning. Just book a little time. And again, then try something that works for you. Don't obsess about the meditation mindfulness thing. But if you enjoy that, do it all day long, because it's wonderful. But if that's not for you, just find another little window of stillness. It will make a massive difference. Perfect. Hope you enjoy.